back to Sprocket. Today I bring you my own variation of the Strv-103, or also known as the S-Tank, or in some circles, the Danger Wedge. So someone suggested to me in a previous video that I should have my own take on it. Now originally I went with a vehicle that was a little longer and actually had full-length tracks and a pyramid-shaped casemate rear crew section with the gun mounted in it. Now, in World War II, don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure they did not have hydropneumatic suspension. I don't think it was a thing yet. It may have been under development, but I don't think there was any vehicles that had it. So, we don't have it in the game, and I don't think it would have been practical to use it, even if we did. So, I wanted a gun that was still fixed, but could move, you know, like a traditional tank destroyer. And so with the casemate one, I mounted it nice and high, but it really didn't have an S-Tank feel about it, so I scrapped it. And I started with this, and I went with a more traditional look. And it might have been a little too spot on, but, you know, let me know what you guys think. You know, you usually do, so I appreciate that, good or bad. Now, I went with the shorter track system, very similar to an actual S-Tank, with the 4 wheels. And we have a forward-mounted engine and forward-mounted fuel tank for crew safety. Extreme sloped armor at 79 degrees. And our crew section and ammunition is all stored in the back. And it's all meant for maximum crew survivability. Fun little fact, the Strv-103 and the Markava, never sure which one's right. My dad's always said Markava. He was a U.S. Army tanker from 83 to 89. So he loves the Markava, and that's how he's always pronounced it. But I've heard it Markava as well. But I digress. Even though the two tanks are 20 years apart, 2 decades, they have very similar criteria for being built. High survivability for your crew, and basically both countries, Sweden and Israel, are smaller countries, not a lot of people in it, and they all, well, at least they always seem to be surrounded by hostile nations. With Sweden, it's because they're neutral, and with Israel, they kind of go back and forth between being attackers and attackees. So they always seem to find themselves in some kind of fight. And so when you look at the Markava, it has forward-mounted engine, super sharp angles, like the best armor you can get out of conventional armor. The fuel tank's mounted up front, crew and ammunition all in the back. Well, same thing with the S-Tank. They just went about it a little bit differently, and I think that's really cool. You get that convergent evolution from the same requirements. It's pretty neat. But since this is supposed to be a World War II tank, we don't have an auto loader, so I was able to put a loader right here. But if you look, I have all the crew members. So we have our driver right here in his hatch. We have the gunner right here in his hatch, back here where the breech is. And then our loader is back here by the breech, as well as the commander right up front. Now the ammunition is actually back here where you see these panels. And the idea is they're mounted over the tracks in these sponsons, like that's where the racks are, pointed outward. So the loader actually comes back here to load the cannon, and he grabs from the racks, moves forward, and loads up the gun. And when they fire, they can actually throw the shells out of the vehicle through this little hole here. Normally this is a loading system, like most tanks would have that little thing to be able to quickly load rounds into the cabin for the vehicle, but you don't need, or into the fighting compartment, but you don't need that because you have this huge hatch back here. But when you're buttoned down, you want the smallest area possible open if you're kicking out shells. So they have this, and you can just throw the shells out back. Now, yeah, it'll be on top of these doors, but what's better, a clean fighting compartment or shells that you can clean off when you're done fighting? You know, so that's where I ended up mounting it. But this actually has essentially blowout panels, so with enough pressure it can pop off. But they would be like wedged shaped, so they could actually fit in from the outside. Hitting it won't push it in, but if the ammunition on the inside of the vehicle goes off, it pushes it out, which I think is a neat feature. It's all headcanon, like it's not something in the game, but I think it's pretty cool. Now, in order to mount the gun the way I did, is I mounted a, the casemate turret. So it's only vertical a little bit, like it's not very high, but it's enough that I can mount the gun to it, and so now the gun can actually move up and down. Let me take a look here at the mount. So it only goes down about 6 degrees, which is not a whole lot, but it can go up 20 degrees. So if you wanted to use this thing as an artillery piece, I guess very long-ranged artillery piece. There we go. Now you can crank up the torque, and it can move side to side. So I used this vehicle in a scenario, and I saw that I could get 4, and I'm like, yeah, this is awesome. I can't remember the name of the scenario. You're out in the woods in the middle of winter, and you're fighting like panthers and stuff like that. I'm like, sweet, I'm gonna take this thing out and go kill some panthers. And I drive up and I kill 2 or 3 tanks or whatever, and I get taken out from the side. And it moves me to another tank, and they haven't moved. The AI just doesn't know what to do with it because the gun doesn't move side to side. Now, I find it easy to aim this thing, honestly. It's not bad since the gun actually moves up and down instead of worrying about hydromatic suspension. But the AI doesn't like it. So whenever I use it for that, I'm going to have to turn on the azimuth. But I ended up mounting 2 external fuel tanks here as well. Originally there was one on either side, but since they were sticking out, I'm like, I don't know. I'm like, why don't I mount them up here? Because they're still kind of behind some armor plating. And I moved them up there because I think it looks cool that it's asymmetrical. I mean, who cares if they get hit and burned? They're external fuel tanks, so, just let them burn and you're good to go. Just like any Soviet vehicle. Yeah. So overall, I like the aesthetics of the vehicle. I'm very happy with that. It took me a while to get to this point. The only issues I end up having with it are sometimes with maneuvering. Sometimes it'll do it just did it. I tell it to turn right and it turns left. See this? It can't decide on what it wants to do. So I'm going to have to work on that. But the vehicle itself is actually quite fast. I can get it to about 40 miles an hour. But its acceleration's not the best because of the gear ratios I've done. Its higher gears are very low, so it'll get up to speed. It just takes it a little while. And what's funny is that speed, it handles fine. It's low speed it doesn't like. But if I stop it, stationary, it moves pretty well, which is something you want out of this thing. Alright, so let's go back here. Let's go ahead and load up our usual friend, the Panther. I'm going to go ahead and forward. Stop turning right. I said left. You gonna shoot at me or what? Ow. Oh! I didn't think that would go through, actually. Because it's kind of a 50-50 thing. Sometimes it will, sometimes it won't. But we can use our old friend the Panther there for a nice size comparison. There we have it. So actually very small. Smaller than the actual STRV. This thing is way lighter at 25 tons. But overall, I think it's fun. This thing is actually a blast to play. I love the S-Tank, the real-life one, but didn't think too much of trying to make one in the game until it was suggested. And I'm like, that's a pretty good idea. All right, let's give it a try. And then it turned out to be really fun, so I'm glad I did. So let me know what you think about it in the comments down below. Did I maybe just hit this too on the nose with its design, or did I make it different enough that it feels more World War II in like its own unique vehicle, or is it just an STRV clone? Let me know in the comments down below. If you guys enjoyed the episode, please hit the like button. I'll see you guys next time.